Greetings and welcome to Dev Update video number 6 for what is officially now the Worlds Above something project. I'll come to the something in just a minute. I may have been a bit naughty. Indeed, well, I had kind of an emotional experience earlier this week, and it all comes back to kind of the work that I was doing when I was away on holiday. I was writing up the history and really kind of like trying to tie together the alternate history that I developed originally when I was working on Craters, and tie that into kind of an ongoing timeline that leads through into the game that I've been working on, which is sort of set in a new solar system, a kind of a new expansion for mankind. Now, part of that, of course, involved digging back into all of that old Craters stuff, which was kind of making me feel a little bit nostalgic, and you know, I actually did a lot on that history, and I wanted to reuse as much of it as possible, and I've kind of rejigged it a bit, rejigged the timeline a bit to make it fit slightly better. But one of the things I thought would be interesting, because I've spent basically the last year since, or maybe sort of 8 months or so since I officially kind of moved away from working on Craters to working on this new game, I've been refining and I've been improving my engine here and the planetary system, all of the tech that generates it. And the original reason why I kind of moved away from Craters is because Craters was set on the moon. It was set on a 1/4 scale recreation of the moon, and basically it was just chugging in virtual reality. It ran okay on like a regular computer at about sort of 40 odd frames per second, but it wasn't hitting anything like what you needed to get VR, to get a quality VR experience. So I kind of, you know, I went, well, maybe it's impossible for my tech to manage a scale of object the size of even a 1/4 scale version of the moon. I didn't really want to scale the moon down any further than that, and you know, various reasons, I decided that it would be easier to go with a whole fictional solar system where I could just have, you know, relatively little planets. Originally I was planning on having really, really tiny planets. Anyway, turns out, even with really tiny planets, my engine was struggling, so there's been a lot of optimization efforts gone in over the last year, and I thought, well, let's try it, shall we? Let's import my original moon height map assets, which was derived from a proper NASA height map data for the moon. Let's import that into the new engine. I have to sort of like jig a few things around, and see how it runs. I did this on Monday night, I think, and yeah, I was up till about 2 o'clock in the morning flying about the moon. I got really quite emotional. I mean, it was properly a moving experience. I mean, I love space, I love the moon, and just to be flying around a recreation of it, and I didn't even go for, I started with a 1/4 scale moon, and it was just butter smooth. I mean, it was perfect. So I was like, well, hold on a minute then, maybe I can manage a full scale moon. I mean, I've not tried this with the new engine today. I've not tried a full scale planet or full scale moon. Well, look, basically here I am, I'm on the moon. I'm on the moon. What does this mean? Well, I think it means the first release is going to be Craters. Okay, like originally the first release was going to be whatever we're going to call it, Space Out, whatever we're going to call it. Actually, as the scope of that has grown, and originally I was just going to have a fairly bare bones, low detail solar system with tiny little planets, and you know, that kind of grew and grew, and I wanted to make it more and more immersive and stuff, and just the amount of assets that I was potentially going to have to create to populate that space started to become real. Also, from a timeline perspective, if these are going to be in the same continuum, of course you can do prequels, but there's something a little bit off about that. You know, there's something a little bit off about going, for example, let's start with episode 4. I mean, you know, a certain famous sci-fi movie franchise may have done precisely that, but you know, I wanted to avoid it if I could. So, Craters. World Above Craters. The catch is, it's not going to be the Craters that I originally envisaged. Originally I'd envisaged a kind of almost like a space program type game where, yes, you were sort of playing it first person, but it had all sorts of assembly components. You'd sort of design and build rockets. There was a kind of KSP component to it there. There was lots of stuff that I wanted to do. I think, in all seriousness, I like if I want this to be something which I get out in months, not years, then I need to restrict that vision down. I need to treat Craters as kind of a prototype version of Space Out. So it's going to be a sort of action role-playing game like Space Out's going to be. There's going to be space trading components to it and things like that. Yeah, it's going to be that. It's going to be more about flying about on the moon and maybe doing missions and stuff like that than it is going to like have all the management aspects to it and things like that. So it's going to be maybe a slightly more static moon than before. But in VR, oh my god, it's amazing. It's amazing. If you love spacey stuff and you don't have VR and you don't get to experience things like this, you need to think again, because it will not come across in this video. I guarantee you, it will not come across in this video. 2D, seeing it in 2D, like I loved, when I was developing Craters before, I loved flying about on the moon, but it wasn't the same, and there wasn't a massive difference between going with a 1/4 scale version of the moon and going with a full scale version of the moon, which is why I kind of settled on a 1/4 scale, because I figured if it doesn't look and feel that different, then having a smaller moon is just easier and it makes travel around the moon quicker and all sorts of things like that. In VR, it is amazing. I mean, I'm not 100% convinced at the moment that my scale is exactly 1:1. I think it might be slightly overscaled, if anything. But there we go. I mean, I don't know where I am on the moon. I had a few moon landmarks and stuff mapped out before, but it has been such a busy week just trying to whip things into as much shape as possible in order to kind of really get to the point where I was happy to make a decision. I basically gave myself 1 week to decide, are we going to go for a direction change? Are we going to focus on Craters? It could just be a one-off, to be fair. It could be literally a one-off little mini story set in the Worlds Above universe that tells a bit of the history and the back story, but doesn't really go into any great detail. That's still possible, and maybe a series of those or something. That's still possible. We'll kind of have to see how it shapes up and whether it holds up and whether I hit any additional technical problems, because whilst I have solved a lot of the issues, there are still some bugs and some things which are slightly problematic. Performance is on the edge of being acceptable. I think there's going to need to find a few more performance tweaks to really guarantee it and to really make sure it'll work on systems that are perhaps not as high end as my development rig here. But it's just amazing. Okay, look, let's just go for a flight. Okay, we'll go for a flight. I know I'm just like talking. I'm just talking to the camera. Like, there's the moon. It's amazing. What I have done. Oh, by the way, I'm in my wizard's outfit here because the airlock does not work. This is just like I can put my hands through the door. It doesn't even have collision at the moment. There is no airlock. There is no air. Fortunately, in my wizard's outfit, of course, I'm a wizard and therefore magic and don't have to worry about exploding due to being exposed to the vacuum of space. Or however it is one dies when exposed to the vacuum of space. Did I show you the poster? Yeah, probably. Right, yeah. The other thing I've been doing then this week is I have been working out if it's possible to control my hopper here. This is the original space hopper from Craters, the original moon hopper, sorry, that I had in Craters, only its control system is a little bit different now. If we go outside, I'll show you the whole hopper. So this is the whole hopper. I have been working on a Mark III. This is the Mark II hopper. I have been working on a larger Mark III hopper as well. That's not quite ready to be viewed yet, but it's much higher detail. It's like, benefits from the year plus of additional modeling experience that I've had since I built this bad boy. But these like little thrust pods on the side, see, they've got little thrust nozzles pointing in all different directions. That's how it flies. So the idea is, unlike the actual lunar lander, the original kind of, Neil Armstrong, the Eagle has landed, lunar lander. Oops, I failed to jump in. Hold on. I can sort of fly a little bit as a wizard, but in low lunar gravity, it's a little bit tricky. There we go. That's more like it. I don't know if I'm going to stick with the whole artificial gravity thing. It's useful from the point of view of keeping the player pointing the right way up and potentially reducing the impacts of simulation sickness and things like that. But I've also placed a few of these like zero-G VR games that have come along. I need to make a few videos on those, but I really like that kind of movement control as well. Obviously it doesn't make sense on the lunar surface, but if you're in lunar flight and you're not actually operating the controls, you're in free fall, so you are effectively weightless. So something worth checking out. Anyway, So there's my controls. That's sort of like basically forward, backward, up, down, left, right. That one is yaw, roll, and pitch. Or sorry, that one's roll and pitch, and then yaw is operated by pressing the D-pads on here, and the vertical thrust comes from the triggers underneath. So I don't know what a good view here is. I don't know if you want to be able to see me. Shall I kind of like try putting it up there like that? Something like that. So you can see out the window, and also hopefully you can see my my controls. So give it a little bit of up. As I was saying, yeah, the original lunar lander had a single engine, so it had a single engine underneath, and then of course it had RCS, reaction control systems, to turn it. But if they wanted to slow down, if they were traveling horizontally in this direction across the moon, if they wanted to turn down, they would have needed to have pitched back like that and then fired their engine underneath, which is obviously a lot trickier. Now I'll probably have some vehicles like that, some classic vehicles like that, because I think that could be quite good fun to control, but this is like vastly easier. I can basically just thrust in whatever direction I want, I can rotate the thing in whatever direction I want, we can kind of like yaw around like this. There's the sun over there, the sun's a little bit small. I shrank the sun down, I think I shrank it too far. I need to actually get this system properly modeled. At the moment there's no Earth as well, I didn't bring Earth into it. One of the advantages of the new engine that I've developed is that it will simulate entire solar systems. So I can put the Earth in, I can put this moon orbiting the Earth. Look, we're actually losing. We'll go over towards the sun, shall we? I can put the moon in orbiting the Earth. It will properly orbit the Earth along its correct path. The Earth-Moon system will orbit the Sun, so you'll get all of the sort of like heavenly bodies and stuff in the right places. In theory, I could put Mars in. In theory, I could put the asteroid belt in. In theory, I could put the whole solar system in. Now, let's not get crazy. The whole point was to, reduce the time to get a working and somewhat finished product to market. But, in theory, these things are all possible for some sort of like, future endeavor or something. All right, let's actually activate. I got like thrust limiter on at the moment to control make things more maneuverable low down, but I'll just take that off so we get full thrust, and off we go. Now, of course, this is unlike in the shuttle, unlike in what you have seen so far. This spacecraft is actually adhering correctly to physics right now. So the only thing it does is have a little bit of rotational drag, just to make it a little bit easier so it doesn't spin wildly on its axis all the time. But horizontally, it has no drag at all. So you can orbit the moon simply by going fast enough so that you're going at a speed that means as the moon drops away underneath you, gravity arcs you around it. Gravity does not actually reduce with distance as yet. That still needs to go into the engine, so the gravity is the same at the surface as it is, or is the same, in high orbit as it is at the surface. So that's one thing that makes it inaccurate, but effectively it still works. It's still fine. You can go into orbit, you can maneuver like a real spacecraft. You can basically put yourself on an arcing trajectory, let the thing fly over to wherever you want it to go to, and then take control when you want to come in and land, which I think could be a lot of fun. I think even just as a kind of a moon flight simulator, this has a lot of merit right now. Build a few missions and stuff into it. I don't know if that's the way to go. I think I'd rather go with the sort of, the full-blown RPG route. But honestly, like I said, I got properly emotional. I was actually I was welling up a little bit. I was like, I'm actually flying around the moon in VR. It's kind of what I'd originally envisaged for Craters, and no, it's okay. One of the things I had in mind when I started working on the whole Craters concept was to make it a VR game, and I was really disappointed when I got my VR headset and discovered it didn't work. It just did not work. But what can I say? Many improvements have been made to the underlying engine, and it works now. You can fly very, very fast without experiencing any real problems. There is probably going to be a limit of speed if you're very close to the surface, where you will start to get frame drag, and I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. There's a couple of possibilities. I could have a moon speed limit and have the lunar authority effectively destroy you if you go too fast, too close to the ground, because it's danger, it's a threat to other moon dwellers, if you will. I could, and this is probably the more elegant option, I could simply downgrade the level of detail that the moon renders at based in part on speed and not just on distance. So the faster you're going, the higher or the lower the level of detail will change to. So instead of getting like 1 meter per vertex, you'll get 10 meters per vertex if you're going at 100 meters per second. That sort of thing, that sort of idea. I think that's probably the correct solution. I just haven't gotten around to giving it a go yet. There are probably other solutions as well, but there we go. I mean, look, we're just flying over the moon right now. We're just flying over the moon. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful, and it's the sense of scale is truly breathtaking, I have to say. And this is the thing that you didn't really get in Craters on a flat screen. You probably don't get it watching it on the TV. It leaves me speechless. What can I say? It leaves me speechless. Look, I'm going to go in and land. Because just to prove that I can land anywhere. And we got the whole moon. Shall I get a bit further away first? Hold on, let's get a bit further away. Let me just give you a nice view out of the window. I'll put myself in as well, because I know everyone likes to see me. I know you all like to see me. There we go. Right up there. Fire the thrusters. I mean, it's just the moon. It's like the whole moon. The real moon, real height map data down to a relatively low level of precision, or high level of precision. Also, the texture map over the lunar surface is based on real albedo maps of the moon. When you get in close, I do apply a detailed texture. I think you may have seen it when I was down, which just puts semi-randomized little mini craters on the ground, because obviously one of the things about the moon is it's cratered all the way down to the surface, and there will be quite a lot of work there to try and differentiate different regions of the moon, different cratering patterns. Some regions will have more boulders, others will have more little pebbles and things like that. That's something that I want to kind of I want to spend a bit of time on and really make it feel like it has a diverse surface that's worth exploring and worth going to different places. I mean, there's the Mara up there. Like the seas, the lunar seas, which are big kind of volcanic lava plains. The side that faces us has these big ones, the Sea of Tranquility and all that kind of stuff. And they are darker because they're made of volcanic rock than the sort of higher regions and stuff. They're also younger, or they're certainly less cratered, so I assume they're younger. Let's just go down and land. We'll go down and land on the Mara there, whatever Mara that is. It'd be nice to have a map of the moon with actual things as well. I'll try and get that done. Maybe for next time. Like a nice little moon globe with your piece moving around it, kind of slightly retro. So the whole idea of Craters was it was set in the 80s. I was going to push that back. I was going to push that back into the 70s in order to make the timeline fit better with Space Out, which is what I shall call the new version, the new game, the new solar system for the time being. It's a tentative name, but it'll do for now. I don't know, I think I might bring it back to the 80s. I really like that kind of 80s vibe. And you've got kind of early computers, but literally maybe make it 1980. So it's very early computers, digital displays, a lot of machinery, a lot of mechanical, manual stuff, twisting the handles on airlocks, that kind of stuff. It might take me quite a long time to get back to the moon because I've flown quite a long way away from it, and I'm going really quite fast at the moment. Hopefully I'll be able to successfully come into land. Let's 175,000 meters, falling pretty fast. I could do with some instrumentation in here. I mean, one of the things I had in Craters was significantly better instrumentation. I had like a horizontal speed indicator and a vertical speed indicator, and you know, all sorts of stuff like that, which I will have to re-implement. But these things take time. These things will take time. It's been a busy week. It's been a busy week flying about on them. I spent a lot of time flying about though. I spent a lot of time just flying about. Especially once I got it all really working properly. I got scatter. Scatter's very primitive at the moment. It's just one type of rock that's scattered at random across the surface, but it's scattered quite a lot. It's quite a lot of it. That was one of the things I was concerned I wouldn't be able to do. Fortunately, the new scatter system is much more robust than the old scatter system. Okay, looks quite nice over there. It looks a bit rocky underneath where I am at the moment. I think I'm gonna go over there. Oh yeah, the jets do fire. I mean, it's just a cheap and very quick visual effect. Also, the astute among you may have noticed that actually I have no ability to generate some of the rotations that I'm utilizing. For example, I have no thrusters that would actually generate a yaw torque on the craft, so I'm just cheating and applying a yaw torque to the craft. Control bursts. We want to switch to maneuvering mode now that we're down low and slow. That's great, just up ahead, look. Oh, okay. And there you go. Development version is development version. Part of the moon is missing. Part of the moon has gone missing. I guess we can't land after all. Yeah. This. Let me just fire the thrusters. We'll get on up high. So we're not going to land today. Just proves that we are, of course, still in development. This has come about because the ever-present demon of trying to develop this sort of game is floating point imprecision. I kind of solved it on a solar system wide scale in Space Out for the things that I was doing, but I was still using a lot of floats for the actual planetary surfaces in places where I could get away with it, because the planetary surfaces weren't that big. They were still big, but you know, they weren't that big. The moon at full scale is that big. It is that big, and so what I was getting little tears, little gaps between some of the meshes, which I'm pretty sure comes down to floating point imprecision somewhere in the code that generates the vertices and places the individual face meshes that make up the lunar surface. And this primarily happens when you're really, really close to it. So I started digging around and trying to root out all of the places where I was using float still and replacing them with doubles. It's an ongoing challenge. It's an ongoing effort. I will get there. Obviously, I've just messed something up so that after having traveled up into orbit and back down close to the surface, the surface when you are near to it is not actually where it's supposed to be, and hence disappears and leaves us plummeting towards the infinite void of space. Never mind. We're still on the moon. We just can't land on it. We'll just have to. We will be like that guy who didn't get to go to the moon. Who was it? The Apollo 13 crew. You know the ones. Yeah, so like the Apollo 13 crew. We can fly near to the moon. We won't get to land on the moon today. Maybe next time we will get to land on the moon. But until then, thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I have been Weird Wizard, and I will see you later.